You know, I'm recalling 2014, let some nostalgia into today's diary. In 2014, Russians planned to get land-based corridor to Crimea. That was a story systemically discussed in Russia. Russians wanted that, it was very often discussed, and they referred to occupation of Donbass as only the first step to make sure they can connect that with Crimea to get a land route to Crimea. And let's look at today's world. Russia indeed owns that land corridor. They are protecting it somewhat effectively, given our failure with counteroffensive to retake the south. And we can discuss different aspects of what led to the current situations. Is it right to analyze these things at this point? Of course, Nikolai, yeah, they wanted to get this route, and so far they are holding the railroad, they're holding the roads in the south, so generally they acquired that path. Have they fulfilled the goals that they declared officially? No, they have not, because these are the goals formulated in a fashion that you can close them at any time or say that they're not fulfilled at all. Because denazification, you know, you can declare that, hey, here we found some janitor, he is the last Nazi in Ukraine, we got him, and that's it, we're done here, let's finish. Or you can gather 1 million people in the concentration camps and say that we're still going through the motions, nothing is done. So it's your choice, that's the goal that allows a lot of freedom. But as for the ground route to Crimea and the railroad to Crimea, yeah, they do have it. They have achieved that much. I remember, Alexey, you were posting a question about the whole situation in the south when you still were in the office. You actually posted a question about Chongar while the landmines were removed from there. And one of the officials in the office, I remember, really bucked back and said, no, let's discuss that later after the war. Yes, there are a lot of aspects about these defense actions in the south that we took or didn't take. And I was posting these questions both publicly and in private as well, because I was failing to achieve the proper response when I was posting them privately to the president and his office. I was bringing that out to the public opinion as well. And I was systemically bringing up the same questions. I wasn't divulging all the details, but one can notice that everything that I brought up in the light, it actually did fit the current situation at that time. The facts were there. So generally I try to be correct. Yeah, Alexey, do you think it's wrong to not discuss the mistakes we've done? Of course, Nikolai, if we do not do lessons learned from strategic mistakes, we will be repeating them. We'll be doomed to repeat them again. So where I'm leading here, Alexey, is that now we have Kharkov situation with corruption. The head of Kharkov civil administration is not detained. He is not removed from his position. Nobody has questions to him. He is giving interviews. Right, he told everybody so beautifully that there's nothing to be afraid of, right, in the recent interview. We also have a deputy head of Sumy region in a camouflage from his vehicle recording another story, so giving an interview, saying, yeah, don't be afraid. Budanov telling about Russians attacking Sumy is wrong. They don't have enough powers. Who are you, warrior? Where are you coming from? What's your rank? Where's your data is from? How can you gauge Russian forces? You, perhaps in your position, can gauge if your schools are ready for a new season or if agriculture is breathing better this year. But you have zero knowledge about the military situation. And again, if Sumy region will repeat the situation of Kharkov, even if Russians just bring 1 battalion there, right, they won't capture much, but they'll harass the borderline townships. And what are we learning from this? Why are we allowing this to happen? A lot of people in different positions in current administration, they lost hope. They just don't want to do anything because nothing effective will be done on the high level anyway. Remember how much hope people had in 2019 during the elections. How much hope have they invested into new president, his government? And all that hope is gone now. Where is that inscribed? Leave the hopes entering here. It's on the entrance to hell, right? So that's kind of, hello, where we are. Stupid actions like capturing the truck drivers on the border, basically de-blooding the transitions, the logistics lines with that. So we're putting us in a very interesting predicament here. And the system that they released to register and to help to assist with the current mobilization is stuck, is hung, it's not working. People are saying, well, that's a good in the administration. They're saying it's a good sign, people are using it. Well, right, but you were not expecting them to use? Why is it hanging on everybody? And it is down to such a degree that I actually have 3 colonels currently, according to that system, in the wanted status. They are officially being wanted and sought for because they apparently have not arrived to mobilization. They're actively serving on the front, meanwhile. They've been serving for 26 and 28 years. Amazing, right? And also officials are coming out now saying that, oh, listen, we don't know if that's a mistake or it's just a wrong setup in the system, but you might be getting invitations right here electronically in that electronic office. It's not a real writ. It's not a real official document because the law doesn't give you an option to give an electronic summons order. But this is how they're testing it. This is de facto an electronic writ, request to arrive to conscription point. And it's just being masked as a document, as unofficial document, an unofficial invitation. Are they holding us for some defective citizens who won't get where it leads to? Everybody understands what it is, and hundreds of thousands of men who came to register using that system, and women as well, who also have to be put on the record, medical specialists, etc. Are we young children or what? Who makes decisions about these communications? Oh, sorry, that's a mistake by the system. People who are abroad shouldn't be getting an invite, right? That's a mistake. We just forgot to set the setting. We made a mistake, we're so overloaded, right? We can see through that. Other issues about security of this application, private data of our citizens, serving in our military, is guarded by the system that was cannibalized from a school diary, essentially. You guys have been talking so much, with so much energy, that you need to count everybody, all men and women who are appropriate for different military positions. Why then did you use a school diary app with all programmatic mistakes that have been known about, where we can see through that your intention is to deceive a person and to drag them into the mobilization system by hook or by crook? And instead of that, you could have been just open and follow the letter of the law that you just adopted. You think those hundreds of thousands of men who went to update their information, they don't know that they might be drafted? They're voluntarily putting the data there, being good citizens. Why are you trying to deceive the rest and deceive them as well? Who's responsible for all these wicked communications coming from this app? Well, our Minister Fedorov did promise that there are no electronic summons for conscription in this office, right? Right, it's formed and they play it as an unofficial invitation letter, right? Well, cyber specialists, Alexey, and cyber security experts who have a lot of knowledge, who served in military and other specialized branches, they actually criticize this app rather heavily. They're saying that, first of all, people are using this app and publishing a lot of screenshots from this app. They're saying that from these screenshots, enemy can make a database. Do not publish the screenshots, blur them. Not in these quantities that you guys are doing. And registration, why actively serving citizens have to register in the system? For example, your colonels that you just mentioned, or Bogdan Kratevich, he is the head of the command of Azov detachment. He is also being wanted according to that system, right? As if he is a deserter. So why that system even needs, okay, if it's filled with holes, why is it so bad? Why do they oblige everybody to register there? What for? They're already serving. Well, yeah, that's a very interesting, sensitive point, Nikolai, because even in the drafting commission, there is a special set of documents for people who are fulfilling certain services, certain positions in the military, that nobody should have access to except for a very limited circle of military branch of our government. There are some secret positions that people should not have access to. So why putting all the data into this hole-ridden app? And where are all these Sirskis? Where is our commander-in-chief. Why they're not out in the public saying that all these specialists should be exempt from registering in that system? While instead we have government officials saying that no exemptions, everybody should be in the system. Do you know that every colonel level officer has at least 3 different folders with his data? And if a person is in a special intel service, they have even more folders, which absolutely should not be part of that system. That should be guarded with more secrecy. And according to the current law, they have to be there. So all one needs to do from Russia is get access to the system and get all the data, all the home, address, relatives, and everything. Come and execute everybody you want. Yeah, that looks very strange. Right, blackmail families, put mines and explosives on different addresses, because you can use that data to find that, oh, in this building there is a very high saturation of high-ranking officers, right? Or in their families. So what's that about? Unfortunately, that's how this current administration is making decisions and making things work. And every day it just gets worse. Sorry, Alexey, it just doesn't fit my head. If we are creating a reserve with the current mobilization effort, why do the current servicemen have to register in that reserve? We, even without that app, we have a database of companies, men and women who works where. There is already a database in existence. Why do you bring active service members to that database as well? How are they related to reserve? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, Nikolai. And if you would be leaving the army, going into reserve, that would make sense. But if you're still serving, I don't think they can answer. The law is equal for everybody. Right. We're all equal here. Well, of course, nobody is equal. And then Leonid Kanevsky comes out and says, well, we never talked about the actual equality from the beginning, right? Oh, Alexey, it's sad and funny at the same time. But I think the problem with our society is that we can see the cracks emerging. And if people are actively attacking military, some of the employees of the drafting committee were attacked and beaten this week. And also more military were beaten up this week on the civilian side because they were thought to be members of the drafting committee. I think it's escalating now that the civilians are attacking the military. If to think of it for a second, they're capable of hurting servicemen, they're actually threatening their lives, and they know that they may be shot at in return, but they're still attacking them. So that's a serious issue, I think, emerging. Nikolai, somebody needs to mention that, and I think I'll again be the one who needs to bring it up. There is a certain category of dodgers, the ones who are much smarter and much more experienced than the ones who are currently serving in the army. And a lot of these citizens are actually not even in the country, they are overseas. Because it takes a lot of will to refuse playing somebody else's game that you don't like rules of. And now we also have some people who actually go commit a crime against a military officer and a serviceman while taking a risk of being shot right there at the spot, but also, running a high risk of criminal prosecution. So we do have citizens who are strong enough to fight for their opinion. And that's the difference between Ukrainians and Russians. We're not Russians. If you are abusing us, you will get such a pushback. If we will continue such a horrible draft effort the way it is going now, we may get a terrible pushback because people who are being pulled to the buses, very often they are stronger and have more will than those who are trying to draft them. And, I'm afraid there'll be a lot more of these hotspots flaring up throughout the country, and we'll see whether it'll turn into a big wave of attacks and resistance. And by the way, among those dodgers, there are a lot of people who served for a bit, tested the army, and said, no, I'm not going to serve under this commander, he's an idiot. And they left their detachment. Why don't we work and concentrate on letting people better the system? Why don't we adapt the system to the current needs and best practices? There are a lot of people who will get the draft, the notice, and will go to the system, will go to serve. Hundreds of thousands, we got them registering in the system. They're the ones who are not going to dodge. And unfortunately, a lot of them will end up in the areas and specialties that they did not request. Many of them wanted to join certain brigades where their friends serve, and they don't have that chance currently. Even those who come voluntarily to a drafting point, even they cannot get a normal human reaction to them. They cannot determine their military destiny. They're still being treated as a cattle, basically. And regardless of the commentary that drafting commission people are overloaded, they don't understaffed, sure, understand all that. Still, the system doesn't work as designed to be. And the problem is, yeah, you can catch somebody, you can use tear gas on him, throw him in a bus, put him in the military clothes, give him a rifle, and throw him in Donbass somewhere near Avdiivka. And then the commander there on the front looks at this person. The person says, no, I'm not going to fight. After all that abuse, I'm not fighting for this country. And then the commander is sending a message back saying, how the heck am I supposed to use these people? And if the commander is trying to punish them, somehow withdraw them from the front line, these people know how to behave. They complain to the hotline of Minister of Defense and create problems for the officers on the front. So we are faulty on both ends. We abuse our people on the drafting point, and then we also fail to fulfill their expectations, abuse them systemically, and then eat the result at the front when they cannot be used in fighting. So who's going to be responsible for that? Who's going to regulate all this? Right, Alexey, the problem exists. Even I saw a publication this week about an officer from the part2 Storm Brigade who heard that new arrivals are getting to a certain location, so he got a vehicle, drove there to pick his new recruits, and basically he's saying that there was nobody to pick from. And as he eloquently put it, the age on the face of these people was much higher than their passport age. So I guess we're drafting everybody who didn't run away, right? Who was probably drunk or whatever. Right. A friend of mine was just reporting that they got 240 men recently, and as a refitting of their brigade, and only about 40 men signed documents and said, yes, we're ready. The other 200 said, no, we won't. And yeah, sure, you can mobilize 300,000, and then 200,000 of those will say, no, we're not going to fight. You guys want to lose the war or what? And your stupid power, administrative power, that's technically is already lost starting today, effectively. So the saddest thing is that they're not learning. The problem is not in the mistakes. Humans are weak. In this world, we are making mistakes, especially working on such an unusual and horrible and stern thing as warfare. But the problem is that we're not learning from these mistakes, and we're just exacerbating them. If we at least maintain the current level, the level we started this war with, of mistakes, we're just going deeper and deeper. All right, I have a key question after all that, Alexey. There was another publication this week that describes the qualities of Andrey Ermak that you mentioned in this stream and the ones before. And besides all critique that they brought there about him, there is also Michael McFall's description that Ermak is terribly effective. So I have a question. If, according to this publication and these foreign sources, he is effective, all-knowing and all-powerful, where does that effectivity emanate in our reality, where he doesn't have enough power or his effectiveness is just a rumor and not everything is so simple? How do you measure the effectiveness of, let's say, my presence and the president's office? That was easy to measure, though. I always tell people, imagine if I wasn't there, how that would be. How do you measure the effectivity of a psychologist who is working on preventing suicides? There are no KPIs. There are some occupations where you cannot clearly determine the KPI. So we don't know what would have happened in the office without Ermak if he wasn't there. Could have been better, could have been worse, we don't know. Terribly effective? Yes, I heard these remarks from many foreigners. Let's imagine a situation that Ermak is amazing, he's not making any mistakes, super effective. Okay, what about the rest? For the system to work, you need many people working effectively. You cannot have just one person pulling it through for everybody. And inability to create the system is the qualifying factor for all of them. I want to say that I've seen him quite a few times when he was throwing things at the wall and roaring at his subordinates saying, "How dumb fucks you are. Where can we get smarter ones?" Well, yeah, here's the problem. Where do you get smarter ones? Why do you not get the smart ones and do not get rid of the ones that are failing you over and over again? So, with their effectivity, that's a big question. While nobody is listening to us, do you think Arestovich was effective in the information work? At least in the information field. However, information field for me is probably the most boring and shallow use of my skills. Was he? Was I? I think at the beginning of war, absolutely you were. All right, so where is Arestovich now? Why is he not being used? Why his talents are not being used to help our country? Why does he have to sit overseas and talk to the mic? Do you think I like doing it when my friends are being bombed, my friends are fighting on the front, and I have to evade the country and remain outside? Who do you think made these decisions? These super effective people? And that's all you need to know about their effectivity. Okay, thank you, Alexey. Do you think it seems to me, or is it right even, that after the Kharkov failure happened and we analyzed some of it in the last stream, then Western allies have lost the faith and confidence in us being able to still hold the territories that we perhaps took back at some point, and Russia, in the meantime, is still capable of acquiring more of Ukrainian territory. That's why probably there was a statement by President of Czech Republic, Peter Pavel, about perhaps first we need to freeze the hot war and then talk about negotiations. Well, Nikolai, I don't think we need to blame ourselves too hard. We have just as dumb of an opponent fighting against us. The only difference is that they have some order that is beating our class. Their order is of a kind where it's not always visible, whether it's an order or a disorder, but, that's their special feature. Well, the West is observing all that, and they understand generally what we can do, what we cannot do. I think we have shown and proved during the last 2.5 years. That's why generally the plan is the same. We need to get to the peace agreement at some point. Today there was a United Nations session that was called upon by Russia. What did Nebenzia say there? He said that the hope for peace is not lost. What did Americans say? We do not allow to use our weapons on the Russian territory. So all the contours have been discussed on Xi Jinping meeting with Putin, a political decision that is framed by Istanbul Agreement's framework. So the party of peace is generally prevailing over the group of war, and who is against it is the Brits and Zelensky. London court today said that Assange may stay in the United States. We're not going to extradite, and that's another red flag, another squabble between them. But basically, US, France, Russia, and China did agree that they will be trying to stop this war on a sum of different reasons, but they're already making statements that are outlining the contours of that future. When Putin standing with Xi Jinping on camera saying that there'll be a political solution to this conflict and Istanbul agreements will be used as a framework, Russia's positions now are better than they were during Istanbul agreements, so that's technically a step back for them, but I understand everybody were called into the United Nations to try to impress on everybody that we will be signing some peace treaties. And of course, we will have for a while those party of Ukraine who want to push further, who still try to run to the border of 91, who still fail to understand that the country cannot provide at least 50% of its military arsenal, cannot win any single war by itself. And not everybody on the front can be a Napoleon, and all the government leaders can be Charles de Gaulle. So we have a question. And I'd probably say it's not so much a question, but my diagnosis. We will be going into the peace process. We'll probably be fighting for a few more months, but at the end, we will be brought to the table to discuss peace treaty. In Russia, the party of war has been dismantled on the apparatus side. Shoigu removed. I think everybody got the message. Patrushev was also removed, and different people are occupying these positions who will likely provide for a better peace track. But overall, the conversations that Russia will be sitting in the bushes and then will jump at us after a few years, well, that's a very interesting position. You mean that Russia will be preparing for the next few years for the next war and we won't? Then what's the worth of us? I think the West understands that rather clearly, and they do understand these risks. And clearly, nobody will give Russia a second chance at attacking Ukraine, or at least will do a lot to prevent it. Because if we do not finish it now, we will run out of force physically by 25. I do not believe the second mobilization after this one will happen or will be successful. So everything will be all right. The war will be done with, will be at the peace talks, there'll be peace. But let me throw additional arrow here before we wrap the stream today. Imagine the war stopped today, in an hour, or tomorrow. All you who are living in this world and the desire to prevail, to be right, to sometimes even kill for the desire to be right. All of a sudden the war is gone. Nobody's shooting. What will you be doing? How will you be gauging what was done during the last 2.5 years? Because the end of war will change a lot of things. People will be ashamed to look in their own eyes, some of the people. Imagine this, that the war may be over with, and are you ready for that? And disappointment was one of the problems, that we were not ready for beginning of war. But I will drop another thesis here, that the disappointment that will engulf our society after the sudden or planned ending of war will be not much less than the disappointment of the beginning of this war. That's why I'm saying that we better be ready for this event. Guys, start thinking, how will you be looking for a job? Those 1,300,000 soldiers that will come back to civilian life, where the jobs will be? How do you think you will survive? How will you feed your family? We'll need to figure out what to do with broken companies, with broken production facilities, with destroyed infrastructure. It's very simple at war times. Everything is black and white. But when the peace returns, everything turns into a palette of gray. Nothing is so straightforward. And there'll be a lot of work. As one writer wrote, enjoy the war, peace will be horrible. Alexey, do you think it's a bit premature to talk about post-war organization of our society? No, I do not think so. What I see here, and even without what I'm hearing and talking about to my contacts here, just referring to the open public opinions and public statements by different leaders, it already shows where the track is leading to. Look at the appointments in Russia. Patrushev and Shoigu, where are they? They were removed to positions with very obscure responsibilities where they do not really have power. Putin and Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping in France and then Putin after the meeting. Xi Jinping says we are for territorial integrity of Ukraine, and Putin comes out and says we are for peace initiatives. And I can imagine that it was not easy for him to push it, but he did prepare. So for me, it's rather decided already. It appears to be. So do I understand your estimate that Putin accepted his secondary position? No, it's not a secondary position. It's just a very stern circumstance that he has to face. People are saying that Russia will fall apart soon, that they're on the brink of destruction. And in reality, it's not exactly so. Their horizon of true catastrophe is within 6 to 8 years, due to sanctions and other processes. But for 6 or 8 years, they'll definitely survive just fine. And Russians are champions about surviving through hard times and also killing millions of people in some obscure war points. So they're not going to break tomorrow. And there's no huge conflict in their elites like some people are talking about. This is not so. And they are turning their appointments now on the track of peace road. Because those people who are taking these positions, they are going to calculate, they're going to work more economically than militarily. And I think Russians just calculated that it'll be more profitable for them to continue on a peace track rather than a war track. It's not that they can't fight, they can fight if they want to, but they decided that it's better for them to switch to a peace mode now. It is also not profitable for many other serious players in the world, the whole war affair. And, of course, the war is driven by heavens in some capacity. If the destiny is for the war to continue, then even agreements will not fix that. There could be some black swan events. But we can definitely observe an ironclad decision of United States, Russia, Europe, and China to push this war towards a peace track. Not tomorrow, not immediately, but they're pushing in this direction rather seriously now. Zelensky is still resisting, Britain is still resisting, but, Britain could not affect these things too seriously because their own army is only 75,000. If Russians brought 125,000 near Avdiivka just for that township, Brits only have 75,000. Their influence is very limited. They put themselves in this position. So yes, we will fight for a bit more. And meanwhile, there'll be discussions about how to finish that, and there'll be new Istanbul agreements, and we'll get to that point. But there is one nuance. Putin already named one obstacle to peace. It's Zelensky's position. He's saying that legality of Zelensky poses a lot of question marks, and we're not sure if he is a proper legal contact for Ukraine to sign the peace accord with. And it's not just Putin who is saying that. Bulgaria, of course, is saying that peace is inevitable. Roman Pope is saying that peace is coming. And that's what's happening in the global politics. At first, it's the ones who are retired from their positions are talking about that. Then the deputies start talking. Then the actual leaders talk about that. And Blinken, in his visit to Ukraine, did mention that. If you analyze his words he used, it was peace, peace, truce, peace, end of war. And they tightly knit two topics together. I think the basic scenario is simple. Stop the war, ceasefire. They finally, both sides figured out that's important to have a ceasefire because it's difficult to negotiate. While the bombs are falling after the 2 years of war, they finally figured that out. So probably there'll be a ceasefire, then elections and peace treaty, or peace treaty and then elections. There are options there. But that's where everything is headed. This is a big, serious consensus globally, and it already is in existence. Plus, let's note here that there is a position of India about participating in the Global Peace Summit, right? Yes. There is also a meeting by G7 about Ukraine, and Chinese are officially thinking whether they need to go to that summit. You know, the problem of this war, Nikolai, it's pointless. However sad it is, you can be burying hundreds and thousands of men for certain political, material goals. This war doesn't have them. As a result of our counteroffensive last year, we pushed the front by 13 centimeters in global numbers. After Russian offensive this year, they'll probably move it back 15 centimeters total. What's the perspective, though? We will not lose. Russia doesn't have enough power to take over us. Russia will not lose because we do not have enough power to overtake Russia. Then what's the point? This war is devoid of purpose. Sadly, it is. The wars are nature, human nature, that's part of us. But it makes sense when there is a direct meaning to that war. A capitulation, obtaining certain conditions, capturing some territories, causing economic defeat, that all exists in this war to a degree, but the matter of these things is not central. You need a central reason for war, right? We need something. If we guaranteed to be able to take Rostov district and get to the border with Kazakhstan, for example, or they would be taking a left bank of Ukraine and giddily adjoining Donetsk and Lugansk. But that's not going to happen. They're barely pushed through Avdiivka, and now they're trying to encircle Toretsk, and they're burying thousands of men trying so. That bloody mess near Kharkov, also pointless and deadly for them. Nobody can win in this war, then why should we continue it? Why continue the war where nobody can win? If there would be a winner, of course, it would make sense for a winner to continue, but in Kremlin, they do understand that they cannot win this war because China is against it, the West is against it, they'll not be allowed to. And we cannot win either because China is against and the West will not allow us to. Then what's the point of this slaughter? It doesn't have contextual content. And I would be the first one to say, yeah, there is reason for that war if there was one, but where is it for any of the sides? Alexey, I think we mostly should be looking at it from Ukrainian side. Right, Nikolai, but I'm disclosing here how United States and China are seeing this conflict. Sorry for interrupting you about us, about Ukrainian side. So when you're looking at these, for example, fictitious companies that got the money destined for fortifications in Kharkov, or when you hear that when companies building UAVs suffer a lot of setbacks because the system cannot allow them to do that effectively. So our current system is not human-centric. It hates citizens. It hates active citizens. It wipes its feet on them. Nikolai, right. If this war would be turning us to a human-centric society, and that would be changing our society in the right direction, I would be for it. But we are not. We're only exacerbating our current issues. And the countries like us, the country that is not producing arms, that is not producing at least 50% of what we need to use in war, when we're stealing money from our own production, from defense and fortifications, we cannot win like this. Look how government is solving our problems. We do have a demographic crisis in Ukraine, right? A serious crisis. So what are they doing? They're implementing demographic tax, right? They're expecting to increase the birth rate with this. And the next step is what? Prohibition of abortion. And then how are we different from Russia? We're fighting for the system that shoots in the back of those who try to run away from it, like they were shooting in the backs of those who tried to flee Eastern Germany or North Korea. They shot the guy recently who was trying to cross Tisa River away from Ukraine. Why do we need such war that only exacerbates these atrocities? What is a single good goal for us to continue? What is a good reason for us to continue this war? To destroy Russian army and their equipment? Well, we do it at our own cost as well. But then again, okay, we did that. A year passed. What next? The front didn't move. Do you expect any of the sides to get some advantage that will help to break the front? No, that's not going to happen. Well, that's it, right? Alexey, just a couple words at the end. I want to touch upon Iran situation. In your opinion, do you think it may change anything? The death of Raisi, Iranian president, and a bunch of bureaucrats with him? Nothing, Nikolai. The system, the government system of Iran has a few deficiencies because it has two centers, but at the same time it makes it more stable, so nothing will change. There likely will be more elections, and reformers will be fighting with conservatists. So if we are talking in the more convenient parlance, it would be as if the prime minister died and the president is still alive, right? So it doesn't change much. It only changes some nuanced politics inside the country. They do have two groups, the reformers, for example, to get a nuclear deal, they were pushing reformers on the certain positions in Iran. But the deceased president was a conservative and a very strong one. He was the one executing protesters back in '78 and recently. So he probably will be replaced with another conservative or reformer, depending when Iran wants to go. But the military cooperation of Iran and Russia will continue. Iranian politics will likely continue on the international arena. Raisi was not a key figure determining the political vectors. He was playing a significant role in the internal systems, but not affecting external affairs. All right, and one more question about Israel, Alexey. Let's shine some light on it. The prosecutor of International Criminal Court already requested orders for Netanyahu and the Minister of Defense, Gallant, of Israel. And also inside the ruling coalition of Israel, there are some conflicts, and one of the components of that coalition already threatened to leave it if Israel will not have a clear and precise plan for war. But I understand you mentioned before that Israel wants to finish this affair, but as we see, it's got many undertones. Right, Nikolai. There are people who want to liberate hostages and people who want to finish off with Hamas. And Israel made a mistake by stating both goals at the beginning. They're mutually exclusive. That's why the operation is very slow, is very slow walking, slow going. They're fighting with 6 Hamas battalions for almost half a year and have earned issues with criminal court while having not completed that engagement yet. My advice here is the same. I think it makes sense for Israel to finish with this operation, to occupy Gaza and stay there until the global change. There are no other options. Any other attempt to build a Palestinian state will lead Hamas to become the leader of that state. So we'll only legalize Hamas. Now Europe will run a risk of legalizing the biggest terrorist group in Palestine if they do so. That's why in order to not legalize it, all Hamas members need to be eliminated. Again, I'm against the deaths of civilians. That's why I know Israelis are doing a lot to prevent those. But giving criminal orders, arrest warrants for the heads of the state, they generally have some immunity as heads of the state. That's why I was exchanging some data here in New York, and people are a bit surprised by these requests for the order, but it's an interesting precedent. We'll see how it unfolds. I don't think that Netanyahu should be seriously concerned with it. I think he has more serious issues inside Israel than from the international pressure. But here he can act as the strong leader. He can finish with the foe, with that serpent of Hamas, and then take what comes after. All right, I need to remind that we are supportive of Armed Forces of Ukraine. There is a link for UAVs for 2 brigades. They're gathering 260,000 hryvnias. It's their fundraiser, and we're sending our signals here to help them get these monies. Once again, there are no small donations. Every cent matters. It is an important act of support of our troops that matters, who are fighting on the front line, who are allowing us to live in peace. And regardless of what we are analyzing and saying here, they are protecting the lives of everybody with their own lives. Alexey, thank you so much for coming out today for that stream. Once again, I probably should say that a lot of things we discussed here should be reviewed metaphorically, right? And some of them have direct meaning, but we're not going to tell you which ones are which. Right, my soul is poetic, I love metaphors. But thank you so much. Do not forget to subscribe to Alexey's channel, to his Telegram, and also to Alpha Media. By the way, Alpha Media just broke through 100,000 mark last week. And do not forget to subscribe to Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. Thank you, everybody. Have a quiet night.